TypeScript Congress is almost here. Mark your calendars for September 21st and 22nd to connect with the vibrant TypeScript community and learn about everything from tooling to testing. Git Nation were kind enough to connect us with a number of speakers so that we can share the personal experiences and journeys of these absolute rockstar developers. Today we are speaking with Stefan. He's written multiple books on TypeScript, including the impressive TypeScript in 50 Lessons that I personally think is one of the most visually appealing TypeScript books out there. His passion can be clearly observed in his online work, and as you will see in this interview, he has a real knack for technical discussions. I hope you enjoyed this insight into his way of thinking as much as I did, so let's go. Can you give a brief introduction of yourself and your background in TypeScript?
All right. Yeah. Hi, Basarat. Thanks for having me today. I'm Stefan Baumgartner. I come from a little city called Linz in Austria, which is in the center of Europe. I'm a product architect. That's what my company likes to call me, which is basically a very nice term of saying that I'm not allowed to produce any production code. No, I'm just kidding. But I work with a lot of teams in TypeScript and Rust, and this is also my background. So when we adopted TypeScript at work at Dynatrace, where I work, I took the time and opportunity to dig deep into the programming language. Worked with TypeScript for so I know it since its beginning. So ever since it was announced, we heard it at our meetups, and I was one of those TypeScript skeptics. But around about 5 to 6 years ago, I took a better look at it, and I found out that TypeScript, if you have a different perspective on the topic, is actually very close to the way that I write JavaScript. And I found it a really valuable tool in going forward. And this started off a love journey with TypeScript and myself, because I was at parental leave for a couple of months with my little son, and my son was asleep during the morning, and I was watching Anders Heilsberg on YouTube during that time and learned everything about TypeScript. And, it finally made click. Finally, I understood what TypeScript is all about. And then I started going on writing about it, giving talks on it, which eventually led to my first book, TypeScript in 50 Lessons, which was, one of those things where I said, okay, if I don't write it, if I don't find a publisher, I need to write and publish it on my own, because this is all stuff that needs to get out of my system. I need to write that down. I need to show this to somebody. And I was very happy that a publisher agreed to actually work with me on that book. So I had some professional guidance as well. But yeah, that's basically my history and my background with TypeScript.
Nice. Great job with the publishing of the book, by the way. It looks very self-published. And I love books that are self-published. It definitely shows that you've worked with someone who's understood your vision and delivered it in the way that you wanted it to be delivered.
I have nothing but great words for Smashing Magazine. So they really were a team that you could share your ideas with, and they worked on it and made something that is very unique. So it's you really can see that it has a lot of influence from myself. So it's not just one of those works where you get a publisher and you write it for the publishers. It's more the other way around. I wrote it myself, and I had a great team supporting me to get it done. And there's so many little extras. So I still keep gushing about it because the team was so fantastic. But you have this little red ribbon inside the physical book, where it's some sort of a bookmark. Where I say, okay, this I'm setting the ribbon there. I do a little break, and then I continue on the next day. And the designer made sure that the color of the red ribbon is the same color as the red squiggly lines in VS Code. So this is how far they went in designing the whole thing, and it's stunning. It's absolutely marvelous, and it was such a great experience working with them.
It's really beautiful, and the website for the book is actually quite pretty as well.
Oh, thank you very much. That's my work, by the way. The website for the book, I made this, but I guess I just grabbed one of Smashing's standard fonts and did a little design around it. And yes, this was, as always, the thing that I did 5 minutes prior to release. Oh, damn, we need a website. Let's just try to get it out somehow. But yeah.
You also have a blog. The blog is also very visually appealing.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, this is also designed by myself. So this was my COVID lockdown project. So when COVID hit early 2020, we had a very rough time because we had a little kid but we still worked both full time. We had no daycare, no childcare whatsoever. So we had a very uneven rhythm in how we worked. We worked interleaved. So my wife and I split up with taking care about our son. And then you're pumped with adrenaline, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning and you can't sleep. So what I did is, let's create a website. So I refactored my entire website during the early COVID lockdowns in Austria. And for that, it's the early lockdown days were dark and grim, but my website is bright and fun. So maybe that's how
you're looking at my COVID project.
Oh, okay, cool. Got it. Also very bright, very fun. And looking good, absolutely stunning.
So you've done a lot of work with TypeScript. I've ended up on your blog multiple times and your book as well, somehow. And you're presenting at TypeScript Congress as well. Mm-hmm. Could you describe what topic that you're presenting and what inspired you for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the talk that I'm giving is called Lies We Tell Ourselves Using TypeScript. Actually, the title existed way before the actual content did. I was asked by a conference called NG Belgium to do another TypeScript talk. And I said, one thing that I realized in the past, so ever since the book got released, I'm also doing workshops for companies. So you can hire me, I come to you for 3 days or something, and I teach you TypeScript. And what I realized is that lots of people have their own opinion and view on TypeScript. And there are situations where TypeScript just doesn't behave like you think it should behave. So there are lots of exceptions, lots of edge cases, lots of things that, just work a little tiny bit differently. And if you have a different view on TypeScript, like, okay, this is just some tool or some guardrails or guidelines that you set yourself on top of your existing JavaScript code, then you see why certain things behave like they do. And this is also the content of my talk. So I'm going to show a 10-line of code example where TypeScript is totally happy with it. So TypeScript says, hey, this checks out. The types are all in order. They are all correct. Fantastic. Go ahead, compile it. No errors. And when you run it, basically every line of code there breaks tremendously. So every line of code is broken. There are errors that happen at runtime, and you rarely can catch them, or you don't know why they are happening, and the types lie to us. So this is where the lie comes in. And then I elaborate a little bit about that piece, and I guess so. I don't want to spoil too much, but in the end, I'm having a little twist. So I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper into the whole topic of why all those lines are breaking, what lies have been made by the type system. But then I'm going to tell you why the talk is called Lies We Tell Ourselves Using TypeScript. And this is some sort of the little twist at the end. So yeah.
Perfect. I love that with your book as well. Every single thing is actually based around an example. You're a very example-driven teacher, and that's sort of what I inspire in my teaching as well. And talking of examples, are there features of TypeScript that you wish that it doesn't have right now that you would want?
This is a really, really good question, because usually I'm like, I'm actually pretty happy with TypeScript right now, and then the team comes along and says, hey, we have a totally new feature, and you didn't know until now that you actually want this.
Yeah, Satisfies is an example. I did not think that I needed that, but when it came out, I was like, thank God it exists.
And I'm using it all the time. So same with string template literal types. I also didn't know that I need them, but I'm using them all the time. I guess if there's one thing that I would love to have is having a strict mode for all the built-in any's. So this is it's not a feature where I say, okay, this is something that I always needed in my work, but rather than this is all that stuff where I constantly stumble upon when working with teams. There's somewhere hidden any in one of the standard library definitions, like body.json returns, returns a promise of any, or returns just any. And if there would be a gentle override where everything would be set to unknown, I would be much, much happier. So, or if there's a little warning if I do an annotation when any is the return type, because then you swallow basically the type check, and this might be actually one of the most useful things in my opinion. There was one, so I've given a very similar talk to this at another conference, and somebody said, any is great. So I love any. Personally, I love any because, I can just deactivate the type system when I need to. Fantastic. But it also kind of violates this, the Liskov rule, where I say that you need to be able to substitute a subtype for a supertype and don't break anything. And with any, this rule is violated because you break basically everything.
Any is both directions. It accepts subtypes as well as supertypes.
Exactly. And with unknown, it's much, much easier. So it's unknown, you just don't know anything, and then you can refine, narrow it down, and then you finally get a beautiful type. So
it's so interesting that I've worked with TypeScript for a long time, but even having this conversation with you, I can see that one of the things that you wanted, that you would like think that the language should have, it sounds to me is like no unannotated any's. So you like there already exists a no implicit any, which basically means that if you don't say that something is an any, you're not allowed to have it. But you can still annotate a function as that it's going to return an any. But when you assign it to a variable, you've never annotated the variable as an any, but because you annotated the function return type, it's still flowing. So you basically want nothing should have a type any unless you have put an explicit any next to it.
Exactly. That's what I want. And there's this dogmatic advice out there where people say never use any at all. And I couldn't say that I would forbid any whatsoever, because there are some really useful situations where any helps you actually a lot, especially when working with third-party libraries, where I say, well, okay, I don't have any type information at all. Let's just go with the examples from the documentation, close your eyes and hope that everything works out again. But, instead of you struggling with making the types match for whatever reason, just deactivate it. So one thing that I most likely would love more than any as a type would be any as a block annotation, where I say any curly braces, then you do some code and you deactivate type checking for exactly this code, and then curly brace closed. Much like the unsafe keyword in Rust, where I just say, okay, this is something where stuff might go wrong. And for me, it's all about having some sort of implicit documentation with my types and with my program, where I say, okay, if I see this later on in the code, or if I have a full text version, I'm looking for any blocks there, I immediately know that stuff is happening there where I need to look out for, where I need to be aware and be alert that stuff might break. And this is much, much more helpful than, swallowing all those any's along the way, or unknowns or whatever. And this would be actually something that I would love a lot in TypeScript. Based on the age-old Python mantra or principle that explicit is always better than implicit. Just make everything that can go wrong explicit, and then you are happy when you find it later on.
I completely agree with that principle as well. I'm actually going to note that down. I'm making a series on principles of coding, and I'm sure this will come up over there.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is one that in the 25 years of me coding, 20 years professionally. Yeah, if I ever would have done something professional. No, just kidding. I think everything where you have to have some implicit knowledge about a system or a language or a framework or whatever. If you need to know something about the inner workings. This is much more likely to go down over the course of time, and people struggle with it in the long run. But if you can write something down explicitly, not by you explicitly documenting it, but by writing it in your code, things have a much, much longer shelf life. And if you have, new people coming in your team, or you leaving the team and other people taking over your code, they are so much happier if they have a programming language and a tool that tells them what has happened without them needing to have all the knowledge from the previous years that are baked into your software. So, huge fan of that.
Is there anything else that you want to give a shout out to?
Okay, yeah. So you mean the shameless plugs? Yeah, I can plug plugs. So much. So we were talking about the TypeScript book, about TypeScript in 50 lessons. When you see this, my second TypeScript book has been released, the TypeScript Cookbook with O'Reilly, which is 100 more lessons. So I always say it's TypeScript, the bad parts. No, it's TypeScript where TypeScript from the real world, where we are talking about situations that I've encountered with teams and with clients of mine, where we saw, hey, stuff might need to have a proper solution. Things are a little bit hard to wrap your head around. And I found 100 recipes where you have a problem, I tell you a solution, and then comes the beautiful discussion part where I discuss over 4 or 5 pages why the solutions works like that, what you need to look out for, where the caveats are. There's no dogmatic advice in that book at all. I removed every dogma, and it's all about making you think and making you aware of the caveats of the type system. And I'm in love with that book. So I'm so happy that I've written it. It's like when O'Reilly approached me that they want to do a TypeScript book with me, I was like, yeah, but I already written one. I don't know if I have more content in me for another TypeScript book. And then I sat down, and within 3 hours I wrote down the entire table of contents, and I said, yeah, okay, maybe I still have something. Maybe I should do that. So yeah, and this is being released right now. So you can buy the ebook already, and the print book should come within the next few weeks. So
I have so many more things that I want to talk to you about. It's been great chatting with you, but I think that we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for spending your time with us, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy. It was my pleasure.
And then I'll write the next lesson, and if there's something that I realize that I should cover before this lesson, then I'll go and I'll build that and then continue down that path. But committing to like 100 upfront and then planning for it, that's impressive.
Yes, don't tell anybody, but I had 105, but then I thought, okay, four of them are just, they are stupid, throw them away. Actually, I threw 10 away, but then I found 4 more. But yeah, it's okay if you have some sort of framework or some sort of some plan that you can work with. But I rarely stick to the plan in excruciating detail. I bend it a little bit and move a little bit. But yeah.
For me, actually, so what I'm most interested in right now is knowing those 4 or those 10 ones that I cannot actually like buy in a book, because they only live with you, and I want to know those.